Mm-hmm.
Hi everybody and welcome to Love Speaks Love. I'm Denise, the host of Love Speaks Love, and this is a platform to expand consciousness, awareness through conversation, people's experiences, their wisdom, and also through ceremony. And today's guest, one of three guests today. I normally say today's guest, but for some crazy reason I've decided to do, I've booked in 3 shows today, which is actually lovely. So my guest now is Halia. Welcome, Halia. It's really gorgeous to have you on.
Thank you so much, Denise. I love being here. It's quite a privilege. Thank you.
No, privilege is all mine. Okay, so that's come on, little head. I need you to a little bit. So I'm just going to share it. I'm just going to check that we are live, which I'm sure we are, but share it as well. For some reason, Facebook's changed some things today, and I can't share it to my page from there, but that's all good. I will share it to that group and that group. I think. Okay, so what I normally do at the beginning is just a little visualization to put us in our heart space. And there's a few reasons for doing that. But the biggest reason is because the more we practice doing this, putting ourselves in our heart space, the more we are in our heart space. And it's really, my dream that we will all be working from that space, because it's actually so much easier to work from. But it takes a bit of practice at the beginning. We can be in and out. So I figure, the more practice we do at that, the easier it is to actually just stay in there. So I invite us to close our eyes if we're in a position to do so. Obviously not if you're driving or operating heavy machinery. And bring your awareness to your heart space in the center of your chest. And take a few long and slow deep breaths, breathing in love to your heart and breathing anything of the day so far or the day ahead. Anything that stops you from being in this now moment. And when you've released or you're ready to release, then breathe in love and breathe out love. And breathe the love into every cell of your body. Fill yourself up with love. And let that permeate out into your aura. And now connecting our hearts together. So connecting my heart with your body and connecting all of our hearts together. Everybody watching live or on the replay or on YouTube. And connecting our hearts with the heart of Gaia. And in doing that, we also connect to the New Earth templates and the crystalline grids of energy. And these crystalline grids and the New Earth templates, excuse me, emanate out from the very heart of Gaia. From that beautiful crystalline octahedron heart. And connecting our hearts with the heart of the sun and with the heart of Source Creator, the great cosmic heart. So again, just breathing in love. And with your awareness still in your heart space. Just moving your body and opening your eyes when you're ready.
It's always so lovely.
And so simple.
It is so simple.
Becky, I'm not sure. Oh, Halia.
You can call me Becky, but it's
to
also nice to be called Halia, Kahira.
I love the name. Just say it a few times because it's just.
Yes, it'll get you there. Halia, 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 Halono hola hala Halia, Kesho hona Halia.
Milia ein iakukula tatayana.
Isakota.
Okay, back to business. So we first connected, I first saw you in Keepers of the Codes when you started doing lives there. And I think probably, was Hannah still there when you started doing lives? Or was that, yeah?
I don't know if she was around, maybe.
Yeah, because I became one of the admins when Hannah stepped down. And yeah, that was where I first connected with you. And then I kind of felt our energy starting to weave together. I don't know if, one or other of us was writing, one or either of us was writing comments on each other's posts, but I felt our energies kind of just starting to weave together. And then we had a call together a few months, I've no idea when, but let's say a few months ago. And I feel a really strong resonance with you, and that call was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I definitely know you, and I feel like we've worked together before in many capacities. It's funny, I don't necessarily feel like we're soul family. I feel like we're adjacent, each kind of doing our own frequency things, which everyone does, but there's a lot of mutual respect and awareness that we're each doing what we're being called to do. And how that interweaves is beautiful,
Yeah.
I don't know quite about the soul family part, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
It's like different tracks almost, but almost like so similar, but just maybe a different band of frequency.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So I'd love to hear a little bit of your journey to how you, because you just told me before that you have PhD, was it?
Yes, in zoology, in science. I'm a scientist, which I think is a little unusual for people on this journey. I remember the first I gave a light language workshop back in February, and I started out singing and then in light language, and then I explained a little bit about it, and someone asked me a question. I told them I was a scientist for my day job, and the lady said, "Wow, well, if you can do it, anyone can do it." Like if you can make that transition from super logical science into where I am now. And I hadn't thought about that before, of that being inspiring for folks. So like many people, I think my journey started with an illness. It's a common mechanism to get people to think about their priorities and maybe nudge them to step outside their perceived boxes. And so for me, it was Lyme disease. And I caught it a few times and got rid of it. And then I caught it when I was going through even harder time emotionally, and with some co-infections. And then that one really was kicking my butt. So it became chronic. And after a while, and it was amazing. I had an amazing doctor who is also awakened. And so as I was just trying to start tiptoeing out of my comfort zone, she was there in full support with however much I wanted to step out. I remember the first doctor's appointment. I was in there and she was saying all the right things and she wasn't being too much. But I remember telling her, I was like, so how woo-woo are you? And she just looked at me and she's like, I'm not really. I know better now. But it was just funny. I could tell that I was about to, like it was an awareness. I was about to start down a new path and it was going to be very different. And I was okay to take that step, but I was also like, this is going to be different for me. So because of that, because you get desperate and you feel just awful, you start looking up any and everything that might help. And so, you know, I just started doing the traditional things. Somehow, somewhere I found out about muscle testing and reading about, I started doing an herbal, regimen. But at some point, and that was helping, but at some point then I plateaued and I was like, I've got to keep going up with my health. And so I got a book on Lyme disease, and the man's brilliant. He's looked at all these herbs and has them all listed out. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start looking at my specific symptoms. And then there would be a list of like 20 possible herbs you might want to try. And it's like, what do you do then? So I figured out with muscle testing, I could figure out which one. And so I started playing around with my own health. And getting good results
on muscle testing. I know what it is because I learned kinesiology in Australia, but
yeah,
how do you do that on yourself? What way
well,
do you do it on yourself?
it's fun because I actually teach this a lot when I'm working with clients, because I think it's an amazing way to help people get more confident in connecting to their higher self themselves. And it's a good way to play around with energy and learning to trust yourself, because that's a huge step in the journey. And so, and that was my first step. So for me, I do the little figure 8. This has been my favorite. In general, you may have seen the arm. People do the arm one, but that typically requires 2 people. And I live by myself with my daughter, and I needed to do something that I could do by myself. So I ended up doing the figure 8s. And the idea is with the arm, if something is a truth, your muscles are strong, like when someone else pushes down. And if it is not a truth, there is weakness. Suddenly, miraculously, there's just weakness, and your arm goes down. The first time, if you've never done it before, you're shocked. You're like, "No, I'm holding my arm up," and whoop, there it goes down.
And the funny thing when you test that as well, because it's not very high pressure.
No, it's not.
Trying really, really hard to make it lock, and you take your finger off that
Exactly. So I started using, and I was aware of that, but I couldn't do that on myself. So I was aware of this, so I thought I'd give it a try. And again, it's the same concept that you link your fingers and you pull them, and if it's a yes, you try to separate them. You ask a question, and then you try to separate them. And if it stays locked, it's a yes. If it opens up, it's a no. And if it's somewhere in the middle, you've got some resistance, I found I usually need to ask a better question. I need to revise, or there's some truths. It's not the whole story. And so, but I've been teaching others to do this as well, which is really fun, because I keep getting this is a key part of people's journey to empower them.
Yeah.
And what I've had them do is, after I help them connect with their higher self, I have them, I tell them about this, but I say maybe that doesn't resonate with everyone. And what does your soul want to convey to you as a yes, if you ask a question? And so, and I've said sometimes you see a color, sometimes there's a hand movement. One friend, I said, what means yes? And she just immediately held her hand up like this. Some people, it's a feeling. And these kind of all, I think, go with people's clairs and where they're at in their journey. So yeah, I love some people are like, oh yeah, I see this, the color green. It means yes, green means go, and red was stop. But it's all your own individual thing. I think being a scientist and super inquisitive, I ask a lot of questions. So I like something that was super fast.
Yeah.
And I could just ask question after question. That helped me until I became more confident in reading the other signs. And usually it's just a knowing. When I use it now, I do still use the muscle testing, but it's kind of like a backup. I get an idea and then I'm like, oh, let me just double check that. Okay, yeah, I'm on the right page.
Yeah. I do the same. And I did learn that that one I learned when I did theta healing, actually. But I just find it easier to put one finger in. So it's kind of, instead of it being both in there, it's just one finger, and that kind of works the same.
Yeah.
It's just one instead of
yeah.
two. Yeah.
It's all intention and setting an intention. It's like getting a pendulum to go and train. Yeah. It's just an intention. So.
And you made a good point as well of connecting with your soul at the beginning. So maybe instead of just asking the question, getting yourself into a quiet space first and more into your heart space.
Yes, it very much helps. I do want to say I think it's 2 people now I've worked with. They're like, this, I used to do the muscle testing and it worked great. And now it's like backwards or something. I was like, well, have you specified? I would like this to mean yes. And I would like this to mean no, like you would do with a pendulum. And then they said, oh, it's working now. So I don't know why. It might reset itself at some point, but if you are having trouble with that, people could try that.
Okay, so back to the herbs. So you were testing yourself for the
herbs. Yes, and so I ended up seeing progress in my journey as I picked out which herb, how much to take, when to take it, when not to take things, what foods to eat, what other things might be helpful for me. I learned to spend so much time grounding. I was outside barefoot as much as I possibly could. All those things that I started meditating a lot more. All those things starting to open up. I started getting Reiki for the first time in my life. And I remember I felt terrible, but one day I was inspired to go to a yoga class. And I went and I felt amazing. And it was my first hot yoga class. And I went and I felt amazing. I was at this peak and then all of a sudden I crashed because getting too hot kind of opened up like all this little lime spirochetes to flood my system and swamp me. And so I didn't crawl, but it felt like I was crawling out of the yoga class. And I went and took a cold shower. I was just crazy hot. And I was sitting there. I was like, why did I come to this thing? And all of a sudden I look over and there's a little card. And I felt drawn to it and I picked it up. And there it was for a Reiki class or for a Reiki practitioner. And I'd never even heard of Reiki, but I knew when to follow the breadcrumbs. I was already starting to trust myself. And I got some Reiki that helped me tremendously on my journey. And then I ended up getting certified in Reiki later. But all those steps, it really helped me. I mean, I healed myself with the help of, my teams. But that's very powerful when you can figure that out yourself and learn to trust yourself.
Yeah.
And so I'm very grateful. Even in the middle of the Lyme disease, once I figured out it was my teacher, that was all I needed to know. This is my teacher and I'm learning from it and I'm grateful. And, at some point I'm like, okay, you guys need to go. But I think I'm done learning. But yeah, so that was how it started. And then I, at some point, figured out, so I started, like I said, I was outside a lot. I started being outside at night, every night, under the moon, under the stars. And I'd find myself doing like little chants or dancing. And then I found myself, making noise with it, the singing and chanting, and I just couldn't stop my mood. And I was raising my vibration. I didn't know it at the time, but that I was intuitively trying to raise my vibration. And then I was being drawn to books. I was drawn to the library, and or bookstore, and I kept getting books out on psychics. And I didn't care about psychics. I didn't want to talk to any dead relatives. Like that was my version of psychic medium. And I didn't care. And yet, the book would like fall off the shelf at me, So I started reading and listening to them, and that helped. And then it was just expanding my sense of reality. And then at some point I ended up getting, what's his name? Brian Weiss's book on past lives.
Yeah.
And I love that book so much. It just spoke to me so loudly. And that made me start thinking about souls, which I hadn't really been doing much. And
is that Many Lives, Many Masters? Was that his?
Yes. Yeah. Many Lives. And I love that book so much. And I think it helped because he was coming from a skeptical scientist background. And then suddenly there's tons of evidence that this woman he's working with is accessing lives that were not the one she was presently in. Mm-hmm. And she didn't have an agenda. She wasn't even aware during her sessions, because he would do regressions. And one day he just happened to say, go back in time when this first began, instead of saying, go back during this lifetime when this first began. You have to be specific sometimes. And she went, whoo, and I forget where, like in Mongolia or something. And I was fascinated by that. And as soon as I was done reading it, I don't know, suddenly at some point it was like I was aware that all this muscle testing I'd been doing for very 3D things, what foods to eat, what, etc. I was like, oh, I could ask bigger questions. And so I did. I started asking things about my soul. And another book I was reading was about spirit guides, because I like to read multiple books at once. And so I was reading one about spirit guides, and I asked about having a spirit guide. Anyway, the end result of having conversations about souls, or reading books about souls and spirit guides, I got into a funny little scenario in my head and asking questions where I figured out that I was in the middle of a soul exchange. And of having two souls at once. And I remember when it happened, I remember in the middle of it, I thought, I didn't even want to ask the question. The question was so big and so outside my awareness that there was I could feel this huge block. I wouldn't even, like, the question was kind of there, but I couldn't even face it. And then when I did face it, and I said, do I have two souls right now? And I could feel it even right before I asked the question. I felt my brain kind of go, it was like twisting. And then I asked the question, and then I immediately got the answer, yes. And I rebelled. I was like, that's not a thing. There's no way, that doesn't exist. Unfortunately, Google did exist. So I Googled it, immediately. It was like 11 at night, which is way past my bedtime. And I looked it up, and I was like, at least there's other people that think it exists. So I'm not alone in thinking this crazy thought, and I'll just sit with it. And from there, then it all just blew wide open. So
this is really interesting, because the past 3 or 4 chats that I've had, the walking concept has been brought up.
As it does.
And there's different. When I first learned about walk-ins, it was actually on Doreen Virtue's Angel Intuitive course in 2005. And what she described as a walk-in was like a swap. It was a soul swap, which I think is,
that's what my soul told me.
Yeah.
It was a soul exchange.
And since then, a lot of people who may have called themselves walk-ins are realizing that it's
a higher aspect,
yeah,
a higher vibrational aspect.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. So once I figured out that I was a walk-in, and eventually I found myself to a Facebook group, and that was kind of my learning group of all the crazy spiritual stuff, because it would trickle in. It was mostly about walk-ins, but it would all trickle in, and I started doing energy work and all that with that group. And I started working with walk-ins a lot. And so it was kind of my first training ground, and I still work with walk-ins a lot. And it's like it's right in my awareness. I'm often very aware, oh, this person's a walk-in or not. And it is my awareness that they both exist.
Yeah.
So I've asked a million times. And I was soul family with my natal soul, the first soul.
Yeah.
And we planned it out before I was even born.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think that that's usual. I think my soul's a planner. And so, but a lot of times it does happen in exchange when one soul is ready to move on.
Yeah.
And another's willing to take their place. That's why a lot of them come in with traumatic events. Mine was not traumatic whatsoever. Very gentle, very, I mean, it was a roller coaster, but it was sequential and very doable. It wasn't traumatic whatsoever.
Yeah.
Apart from that first, like, what? But I have interacted with many, and they're like, I'm not sure what's going on with this walk-in. And again, at least in my perception, I'm aware of it. I'm like, no, this is a higher vibrational aspect of your soul who's working with you. So it is my awareness that both exist.
Yeah.
And maybe the details don't matter.
Yeah.
In the end, but sometimes it can help to understand some nuances. Like people are suddenly like, why don't I remember my childhood suddenly?
Yeah.
It can give them relief to know what's going on, and to be able to, especially if you're doing big energy work or heavy energy work, understanding some of those nuances can help you shift things with greater awareness. You don't have to. It can help things though.
And I think some of the experiences, I wanted to say symptoms, but it's not the right word, but some of the experiences of both can be similar as well.
Very similar, yes.
So if a higher aspect comes in, it can cause a personality change, because you're making your decisions from a different place from how you used to as well.
Exactly.
I really concur with you, and it may be that you come across more, I'm going to say, just for differentiation purposes, I'm going to say because a walk-in feels more apt in a way for your experience, in fact, let's just take walking out of the equation. Let's say a soul exchange.
That word resonates so much better to me than walk-in. A walk-in feels like, oh, someone took over my body. It has some frequency about it that doesn't sit well with my soul.
I hear you on that. And soul exchange is more accurate as well. Whereas someone's own higher dimensional being that comes in, to me, that's more of emerging. It's more of an embodiment of your higher aspect, and it's not a soul exchange. It's the same primary soul that the multidimensional
with different
is coming from.
Personalities, so to speak. And I've done plenty of that as well, and I think maybe that helps me differentiate it, because when I think back to my natal soul, I mean, it's very different different experience level at the soul level, very different, just the trajectory and what she wanted to get out of her earthly experience, and just where she feels. I don't know if you can feel her as I'm talking about her, but you may, or people may just feel kind of where she is. She was great. She set all these things up for me when I was ready to be here, which I'm super grateful for. But I've also experienced having other soul aspects come and work with me, and there's that merging. Sometimes it's temporary, just so that, like, they're more in my field for a while, and then usually they kind of go back to maybe what the cloud of aspects. And typically it was to help me in some fashion, to help me, maybe with a personality trait I needed to step into a little more, like to be stronger, or to be more efficient, or be aware of more galactic things. But then it was like they'd be here for a while and then they'd leave. I guess some of them, it is emerging, but then I don't have to focus on it anymore. I just am connected to so many. I don't differentiate anymore.
And it feels like they're there within you until you've embodied whatever it is that you're to embody.
Yes.
And then you don't need that energy anymore, which
exactly
is how I used to feel about spirit guides as well, that we have many spirit guides, which now I'm actually thinking maybe all those spirit guides are all me as well.
At least a lot of them are.
Yeah.
I don't always think they're all me. They could be. I mean, it depends on your definition of me. But I mean, if you go all the way up to say, I am all of source, then yes, they're all you. But if you differentiate at the soul level, then some are me, and some could be considered separate souls.
Yeah.
It's very complicated, but it's also so simple if you don't get too in the weeds with it. That's what I'm getting. I tend to, like to dig around just enough to understand the nuances to help explain things to people.
And I was wondering as well whether, because of your experience, that you attract more people who've had soul exchange to you, so that you can help them as well.
Yes, it was funny when it happened. There was one person in particular who worked a lot. He worked a lot with walk-ins. He considered it his mission that he had agreed to down here, probably among others, but it was a big one. And I remember at one point he said, yeah, I said, oh, I think I'm starting to work with walk-ins. He said, yeah, I put in a word that said, you're ready to start working with walk-ins. He said, I didn't tell you, but it was really funny though, because they do tend to find me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to answer
yes.
There's a question, Zoe. We will put. Someone's asking how to get hold of you. I usually leave that question till the end, but if you stay on, we'll get to that.
And I did want to say, if anyone is feeling, I mean, there's a reason the walk-in conversation keeps coming up, and if folks do feel like that is something they'd like to reach out to me about, I do offer. I haven't even put that as a session. Maybe I should. That's the type of work I do as well. It can be a little tricky to navigate. I tend not to think about it. I do think about it, but I don't get stuck in that is my whole being, is being a walk-in, because I got other things to do.
Yeah. And it's something that happened rather than what you are, if that makes
sense. Exactly. And for some people, though, they've kind of taken it on as this identity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But for me, I think the most beautiful thing I noticed was that once my natal soul left, and I could just look around at Earth and say, oh, I don't agree with that paradigm. And there it went. It was so easy to just say, oh, that doesn't resonate. I'm done with that perceived way of being on earth.
Yeah.
And then, and so for me, I think it helped coming in at a much higher frequency. I didn't have to do quite all the slogging along the levels. Um, I don't know, I was able to release much easier.
Yeah.
So right after I read that Brian Weiss book, then I think it was the next day, and I had the awareness about the walk-in. It was probably the next day I was like, I want to do one of those. And I Googled him, and he has a little video you could follow along and do one of his regressions with him, past life regressions. And I did one, and I was like, I think I could do this myself. And then I just started pounding them out. I mean, so by the next day, I hit the ground running, and I started healing past lives like
Yeah.
mad. And I was boom, 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 boom. And I learned how to do it, how to do just enough to not get caught up in any particular story, but see the lessons, do the healing, share the love, the forgiveness, whatever was needed, and then just move on.
Yeah.
And I did that. I know I did it first with my natal soul, and I think it was like my thank you gift is what it felt like. So, and I noticed I was doing them, and then at some point I had an awareness, my claircognizance said, that life I saw last night and was working on, that felt so different. It felt very different. And then I was like, oh, is that from the other soul? And I got a yes. And then I got, oh, I think we're done with the natal soul. And then I thought, maybe she'll be leaving soon. And sure enough, when I checked back in the next week, I had said my goodbyes and thank yous and all that. And she was just gone. There was no fanfare. There was nothing. But I was just grateful. And then again, like a rocket, I just was flying on my journey.
So your skills on a soul level were presumably more suited for the from that
Being here.
point. Yeah.
Being here now.
Of what you have to do from this point on.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I came here to help with ascension, and I'm here, and I'm just fully committed. Mm-hmm.
And interesting as well that what you mentioned, because we can hold things on a soul level from past lives that have happened to that soul. We can hold things on a DNA level as well. So that is the same. So that isn't things that have happened to you as it were, as a soul or a human, but
it's this body
in the past
or the ancestry. I do find every once in a while, and maybe some friends who have picked up, they're like, there's something I'm getting from your childhood. I'm like, I thought I did all that. But you know how sometimes there's some old templates still in your body chemistry or your cellular that still needs to come out. So I do still deal with some things from my past here, but you're right. Sometimes there is more ancestral stuff that's just in our DNA lineage. I still work in my family lineage, so that's that DNA connection.
And it doesn't really. It's more of interest to find out where these patterns and beliefs have come from, but it doesn't really matter.
Yes, it doesn't matter. It can be fun. Yeah. It's thought exercises, but
So you studied zoology.
Yeah, biology, zoology. I'm an avian ecologist, so I work with bird conservation across the Americas.
And presumably you went into that because of your passion for animals and for birds in particular.
Yes, and nature. I loved being outside. I loved connecting, and the birds called me very, very strongly. As soon as someone put binoculars in my hands in college, I was, and even that was kind of seen with new eyes. I was in my college class. Actually, it was a zoology class, and my professor paired us up, and I was paired with a Thai woman, and we were gonna walk around, look at things, and I was being young and feeling kind of smug, like, oh, I know the birds around here. I mean, I probably knew like 5 species, but I thought I knew them. And she wanted to see cardinals, which are beautiful, bright red birds.
Mm.
And there's a male and a female, and the male's really bright red and the female's brown. And we could see them over there. And I was like, oh, I'll go help you find those. I felt like I was going to help her. What was so funny, she saw that beautiful male cardinal and it blew her mind, and her excitement was joyous to see. And I remember putting my binoculars up and looking again. I was like, what is she seeing that I'm not seeing? Why is this magnificent? And I saw it finally in all of its splendor. And then I said, oh, that's like really seeing it. I'd been around it my whole life and I hadn't really seen it and appreciated it. And that's what it took. It was a little switch that turned on for me. And then I probably became a little obsessed in a fun way. And so I ended up being a field biologist for a long time, working in the field, traveling around, working with birds, exploring lots and lots of habitats and ecosystems, and learning so much. It was really fun. Yeah. And then I went back to graduate school for my master's and PhD. Yeah.
And that leads me on to a question about animal communication.
Ah.
So for me, light language is it's like a stepping stone to telepathy as well.
Yes.
And often when we speak to each other in light language, it's not that you're translating the words, it's that you're feeling the frequency of the words, which to me is a similar process to communicating with my higher self, with my guides, my team, whoever. It's all the same. You just turn the dial a bit to a different frequency.
Uh-huh.
Do you communicate with the animal kingdom?
I don't have conversations per se, like some do. I'm always speaking light language to all the animals and plants. I feel like my soul now has a stronger connection with plants. The plants, especially the trees, just kind of sing to me, and they feel this huge wealth of knowledge and strength and just wisdom, and they're always there to if you need strength, you can reach out to the trees. I tell anyone, ask to work with the trees right around your house. If you're having a hard time, they can help give you strength, and connect with them. And so, and all the flowers, I work with a lot of flower energy. So I think my natal soul was much more in tune with animals. I still am, and I love animals.
Yeah.
But I think for whatever reason, I am very attuned to plants.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say you're working with flower energy, can you expand on
that? I've been told I need to do it more often. Mm-hmm. I do know I love mixing teas and things. So that's probably pulling back on some herbal knowledge from my past. Yes, exactly. And it's fun. I tend to, my strongest clairs are knowing and feeling. So clairsentience and claircognizance. And but I see some as well. But I have friends who see a lot more. And when they see me doing energy work, there's 2 things they see. They see like this gold filigree everywhere. I'm like decorating things and gold, fancy, girly filigree everywhere, which is funny because I was always a tomboy. And I never had a single piece of gold jewelry. I mean, maybe one, but I didn't wear it. And then the other thing, they see me, or I feel it too, is I plaster flowers everywhere. If I'm doing energy work, they're like, wait, why does it have flowers all over it now? I'm like, that'd be me. Because I just know I do it. I don't consciously do it.
Yeah.
But and I work with the rose line a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of, like, if I'm working with ley lines, there's just flowers going all along it. And I was guided to start taking pictures of flowers and write light language on it, which I've only done a couple times now, but I was guided to start doing that. So I have started, but it's just begun. So taking the flower's own natural energies and then laying over some either verbal or written light language on top of it.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'm very much in resonance with that as well. And often more when I did work on the land, clearing land.
Yes.
When I was living in Australia, I still do, but I haven't advertised it at all. But work on people's properties, that kind of thing.
Yes.
I would plant flowers, and I'd consciously in my head, like when you clear you then plant all the flowers, and the rose lines and the rose energy as well. I've worked with for I don't even know when that came in, but it's
strong.
4 years, maybe 5.
Yeah.
And the rose lines, for anyone that doesn't know, they're ley lines on the earth. I don't know if this is right, but I kind of feel that there may be like a straight lines and wavy lines. Yeah, I don't know about that, but
I'm just getting there, whatever is needed. With a dear one tacked on the end. It's whatever is needed, dear one. Which is funny.
For you, are the rose lines different from the ordinary ley lines, or are they all part of the structure?
Yeah, actually, when I've seen them and worked with them, I've often seen that there's old ley lines that need to be cleared out. Some old ones that are part of the rose line that need to be nurtured and healed, or cleaned is more the correct word. They've kind of gone stagnant over some of the heavy earth energies. So it's kind of like a sprucing up and spring cleaning of them. Yes, they feel different. And part of the new is bringing in the new frequencies that we're trying to embody here, plus what was laid down originally with the rose line. And so it's not just tuning into what was there, but it's also anchoring in the new frequencies into what is there and merging those, weaving that all together into something that's magical and beautiful. And we can't even quite comprehend what it will turn into. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the way that I've been viewing it a little while, and this is partly due to a guy called Franco de Nicola, and the way he describes it is you've got the organic matrix, the organic lines that were the original lines, and then you've got the inverted matrix on top of that, which is like, it's inverted, it's like the opposite. So when the Earth's energy changed so that we could work in a dance of polarity, this opposite vibration came on top. But it's inverted, it's like opposite, it's
holding it in and down, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of the work that I've been doing has been like
opening it,
unraveling the distortion.
Yes.
And then bringing in, so then you've got the original lines kind of beneath, for want of a better word, and then bringing in the new cosmic lines kind of connect with the old to create a new weave.
Yes, and there's new grids that come online somewhat regularly with different frequencies, and merging all those in together. In the past, I've done more what feels like plumbing kinds of work, so architectural work. But when a line or a specific location feels clogged with energy, I and others that I work with have gone in and helped open that up.
Like flowing.
So it's flowing again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it feels more like plumbing
Yeah.
deep within Gaia. I also do a lot of original template work. And so the original ideas of Earth, the original intentions, and I've worked with others and seen. I mean, I've had visions of Earth forming and seeing what that looks like in the oceans, and it's really beautiful. Seeing the continents moving, it's very fun, and sharing that as a shared experience with others who I was working with at the time is always wonderful. And so, doing some of that original architecture template work, and then pulling in what is needed now. So I was thinking about Dina from Keepers does what kind of code keeper are you, and sessions, and the one that she tuned into, I do lots of types of code keeping, but the one that she tuned into at the time was they told her it was a recreational, not recreational, although I like that, but recreation. And so and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I've been doing. It's like those original templates, and then recreating them into something new that's moving forward.
Yeah.
So it was nice confirmation when she said that. I was like, oh yeah, that's what I've been doing for the last month or so.
Yeah. Yeah, that resonates, because the original Earth energy it needs an upgrade as
exactly,
as Gaia moves forward and ascends as well. Then
but it's like not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe there are still some good things we can use, that we can bring forward to remember what some of those really positive intentions were.
It's like adding to it. It's not, as you say, not throwing it away, but just kind of adding to it.
Yeah. Although some things I'm like, no, let's not use that anymore. We'll let that go down in history. I feel like some light language. That's okay. It's hard for me to speak in English for very long. Ikona halala da kata ta keshkoro hotain shera katain garahana nanahase horo utandaire kita yeshikona halale lingata yeshahona mohalala kaisharatana shikita tandu soto. So it's blessings for everyone doing this type of grid work. Katanshko holala antai shikato no siteraka sono otaira. Keep your heart light when you're doing this kind of work. Kono to shiparanataise toshalala. So blessings to everyone who does that work. It's much appreciated by everyone.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting, when light language first started coming through for me, it was for activation purposes, or it was for clearing the body. It was when I was in sessions. And similarly, it was a progression, like the dancing kind of actually came in first, and doing written codes, but in the air, but I didn't know what they were until fairly recently. And then tones and frequencies, and actually just before that, a sentence, again, for want of a better word, using a linear language term, a sentence. But it was always for the purposes of activation. Yes. So that was how it was kind of brought in for me.
And that's how a lot of people are.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of came to realize that you can use it in conversation.
Yes. Well. Because our souls want to talk to one another.
Yeah. Yeah.
It helps us anchor in even more here.
Yeah.
When we own it, that it is part of ourselves and it's divine. We're not just channeling. It's like we own that part of ourselves.
Yeah. And it's a frequency, and all words are frequencies, numbers are frequencies. So
exactly.
It's the same principle.
Yes.
And, just to say, I don't necessarily understand it in a linear way. And my feeling is that sometimes it won't necessarily translate in a linear way either. You know, a word of light language could almost be 1,000 words of English. It's like
Yes.
it's sometimes very compacted into
Mhm.
a light language word.
Exactly.
And to
I
say,
always see it as like lots of layers.
yeah,
Like eating like baklava or something. There's so much packed into this little yummy goodness. And what someone may pick out is different from what another picks out, which is why when we see someone post a picture of their light language drawing and they say, what is this about? And you see 15 answers, some of which are similar. But people are picking up on the different things that resonate with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me to, you know, speak a sentence, a paragraph in light language, as you say, that can be heard and translated differently. And because of its quantum nature as well. And even in terms of the activation, what is activated in one person won't necessarily be the same activation in everybody.
Yes. And that's why I don't get too fussed when someone says, well, I thought it meant this. And I was like, it probably meant that as well.
Yeah.
I don't think you're wrong or I'm wrong. I just tend to accept that you had that experience for whatever reason and that was the right one. So you can both, and that's kind of a new way of thinking, that we can both be right, or 6 of us can all be right when we're saying it means something different. That's part of an acceptance of each individual as the individual, their sovereignty. So I don't know, it excites me. I love light language so much.
Klimet it aran Elia et od oist el ima ad od an I kikikia tatatai.
Oh shalala, you're gonna make me cry. Yeah, I think you were saying something like it just radiates off of me or something. It's a lot of my purpose here. At least right now, to help others open to their own light language, to be okay and gentle with themselves on their journey. To me, light language, and to most people, it feels like coming home. And thinking about loving yourself. Like so many people struggle with that piece of it. I know I need to work on loving myself. It really helps you learn to love yourself. You can give yourself activations, and it helps with clearing, and healing, all the healings. It can be comforting, and it helps you remember you're not here alone. Your whole soul and your soul family, as I get chills, are there with you. In Toshala, in Toshala, in Toshala. Which is why I think conversing, and that's a big part of my soul journey, is helping people remember that they can converse. They can allow those other aspects of their soul to speak through them and have magical experiences. It is the best thing ever to have a conversation in light language and be laughing and crying, and you feel sympathy or empathy of what they're talking about. And the deep laughter is the only thing I can compare it to is like a baby laugh. The one that makes everyone else laugh. Those experiences I have on a daily basis because of my light language.
Yeah.
Very deep soul connections.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you like to I'd love to share some codes with you at the end and kind of finish with that, but I'm just prompted to bring in the Hathors as well.
Yes. Yeah, I was supposed to wear this, I guess it's tiger's eye, but someone gave it to me because I was doing Hathor stuff. It's gold. So yeah, I think they want to sing. They keep wanting to sing through me. I don't know. What's your experience with the Hathors? Have you worked with the Hathors?
Yeah,
I feel like you have a lot.
Yeah, relatively. I think I was working with them before I realised I was working with them, because I think it was in our conversation that it was brought more to my awareness when we spoke. And so since then, I've been more consciously working with them, but realizing that I already was. I just haven't named it
Yes.
much.
The frequency is amazing.
Yeah, it's very gentle. It's strong and gentle.
It's strong, gentle, almost feminine, but now I'm seeing males too, but it's a strong, gentle frequency. The
Yeah.
males don't need to be overpowering, because why? What? It's like there's no need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ketohoshana. So they work with me a lot in toning. Um, and that's who gave me the name Halia. Well, not gave it to me per se. I was working with Gretel Borrego. Well, we were having a chat, and all of a sudden, and I was telling her about, she said, because she'd seen me before and she'd known my higher self was Arcturian, presenting, and and then she's like, "Who's that behind you?" And I didn't tell her that my higher self had switched out, the aspect had switched out, and it had just happened like a few days before. I was suddenly aware that I now had a Hathor who was my higher self. She's like, "Who's that behind you?" She's like, it's a Hathor. And I hadn't told her, so it was wonderful when she picked up on that. And then of course we immediately get pulled into like this vision of, I guess there were 12 Hathors, or 11, and then me, 12 Hathors around like a really low table. And she's like, "They really want to work with you." And I was like, "I know," but she sees really well. So she was seeing all these things. And then she said, "They really want you to pick out a new name." And I was like, "I know, but I haven't found the right name yet." And she's like, "Well, I think it starts with an H." And she immediately pulls up names on the internet and she starts going through them. And I was like, "Whoa, okay." And so all of a sudden, Halia came up, and I was like, "Whoa, that's it." And so I always feel like the Hathors and we kind of picked it together, because we were kind of going through names that started with an H. And that one is very resonant with my being. And it's Hawaiian for she who remembers a loved one. And I always feel like I know so many souls on earth, and I'm remembering everyone when I'm interacting. So to me, it made sense for the English interpretation,
Yeah.
but just the feeling of it did as well. So I just wanted to share that. Of the Hathors helped me pick out the name Halia and Toholalanta Shiro Tana. Yeah, and they have big plans for me to keep working with them more.
It feels very watery to me, that name.
Yes,
It feels very,
it feels kind of Lemurian.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would maybe even say moo.
Niko Shohona Bahasi.
I'm starting to associate moo a little bit more, even with
Yes.
water energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay, so I'll just bring in their frequency in whatever language. Kim solo sandai de saranaya se om deo oh deo Minna leo onda shorai sana haise shorundu itale. Hamanahasa Sirshania Kanchihiana Asane Samuale Leakashiyama Tani Niane Kunguhama Mahale Sirtona Niasha Hanale Konipama Pipose Orikana Corona Vikashana Osana Tishe Correporana Tetana Setoikia Shitotoetikia Hola la tieno Tosho Hola la itenga shora Komana Esona
Nihan un ara kul era it ara ino kullapan kule an oro ost ara ke ian aist ai oron oya kun erat an okum an ero on kul ana et od ana ai kia an oko oyas arat an el ian ero on oko kokoya tanaka ki el an at an kul ya era on at anaka ol ian ela nomokon aya ele it onoya kakakai an ero on oko kokoya kul era in it ut oya kul an manat ut elian ore tanaka kaka Kel ayast on kakokonorot on ibara elehan aratototoya
Gisota la hana tikishoro huna takishoro huerra tatikirito na shikorota nikopora kaleleki tanisharito nandata sukota ingarakeko kukuna teori tara. Oshoro huna haleleki arakante shira kana shikora muela imuela la ikoru huna tatasi suno osha Ora katita nikobara neta te kashono o tatanda te griko share tana isho la yo no kirate shora nana nikase ora neshikara no toto ishara kumbarate ikomalate rikano huta eshora tana te sita na toto shara mupapeshkoro hunda takale kirakundi siti te de kushamana na itase.
ke od tata el era ene ka od an akaka ai el era on aya kulesta
I know it was funny. Yes, helping others see. And we were interweaving and remembering our work together in the past. I was off planet with some pyramids, Koshanata, and weaving some of that in together here with this experience. And it was interesting. I ended up seeing a big tower, like a Rapunzel kind of tower. It was really big. I didn't really see any windows, but it almost felt like the Tower of Babel or Babel.
Yeah, that's what I thought when you said that. Yeah.
And how that can come down. It's okay to speak many languages. It's what our souls do. Because there's more than one way to communicate. And when we feel, we know we don't have to be scared of these strange sounds coming out of us. Or we don't have to be scared when we don't fully understand. If you wait patiently with open hearts, the understanding will come. So instead of, making this crazy, super tall tower, just let it dissolve even. I didn't see us breaking it down. I just saw it kind of dissolving out of existence.
Yeah, just not being in existence.
Yes, like stepping out of that reality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The color behind you keeps changing. it's going very blue, like my wall. And I'm like, am I actually seeing that? Or is it something from
My wall's off-white.
getting superimposed on you, and it's like coming across your face as well. But the interesting thing was that happened with my last guest as well. And I'm like, am I sick? I'm like, I don't know. And it just doesn't really matter.
But I'm being reminded of new colors coming on the scene too.
Yeah.
And just all the new experiences, like the tree starting to talk to you or something.
Yeah.
And you don't have to fully understand it. You can just love it and embrace it for what it is. And that will go a long way for each of us in our journeys.
And I wanted to say to you before, when you started speaking, you know how Namaste is Buddha in me sees the Buddha in you? It's like the mermaid in me sees the mermaid in you. That was what I wanted to say.
I was getting, is it a Nereid? Is that isn't that like a water, like a dryad, but for the sea? Nereid, I forget. Nereid. Anyway, that's the word that came to me. It was like a sea being, yeah. So like a mermaid. I'll have to look it up now. This crystal keeps wanting to play too. These are amazing for high frequencies and healing.
Yeah, I felt that kind of higher heart was where it.
Yes. For anyone who wants to connect, they may. To feel soft, but strong at the same time in your inner being and inner knowing. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. We could talk all day.
I know. Very, very easeful with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will do this again soon, I'm sure. Yeah, are we finished?
They're never done. You know better. They always want you to do work or convey that last thing.
Thank you. Halia, it's been really, really beautiful.
Thank you so much, Denise. All my love to you. And your extended family, I don't know. That came through. Much love to you and your family.
Inai, era, ind udora, un ai, akist. Hea ananana ko kai it ia. Thank you. And thank you also to everyone watching live and everyone who catches this on the replay or on YouTube. If this has resonated with you, it's always helpful if you share. Thank you. Anything else to say? I'll be back at 8 o'clock, so in about 2.5 hours with McManus live on my page. But for now, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Much love.